Every sailor who ever plundered a Spanish galleon knew the stories. The gold was cursed, take it, and misfortune follows. Madness comes next, then death. This was not superstition whispered by frightened cabin boys. Hardened pirates, men who had slit throats and watched ships burn, genuinely believed that stolen treasure carried something dark with it. Pirates of the Caribbean made this idea famous for a new generation. Captain Barbosa and his crew transformed into undead monsters because they spent cursed Aztec gold. Unable to feel pleasure, unable to die, trapped between worlds until every last coin was returned. The movie was fantasy, but the legend it drew from was centuries old and rooted in something sailors had witnessed with their own eyes. Long before Hollywood, sailors in Caribbean ports told tales of crews who found fortune only to lose their minds within months. Ships laden with Spanish gold that vanished without a trace. Men who buried treasure and died before they could retrieve it, their ghosts supposedly guarding the site forever. The curse was as real to them as the sea itself. Captains recorded these beliefs in their logs. Ministers preached about the wages of sin when pirates met gruesome ends. The pattern seemed undeniable to anyone paying attention. And here is the strange part. There was something to it. Not ghosts, not supernatural vengeance. Something far more interesting. Something that actually killed people in ways that looked exactly like divine punishment. Was pirate gold genuinely dangerous? Could handling stolen Spanish coins drive a man insane? Could there be a rational explanation for why so many treasure hunters met terrible ends? The answers lie not in legend, but in chemistry, metallurgy, and the brutal economics of the Spanish colonial empire. What sailors called a curse, science would later identify as something else entirely. The truth is more disturbing than any ghost story because it means the curse was real, just not in the way anyone expected. To understand the real curse, you have to travel to the silver mines of Potosi in modern-day Bolivia. In the 16th and 17th centuries, Potosi was one of the richest cities on earth. The Spanish extracted unimaginable wealth from Cerro Rico, the mountain of silver that loomed over the settlement. By 1650, over 160,000 people lived there, making it larger than London at the time. The city had theaters, cathedrals, and gambling houses. It also had death on an industrial scale. The silver and gold that flowed from these mines became the coins that filled Spanish treasure fleets, pieces of 8, doubloons, escudos, the very currency that pirates spent their lives hunting. But extracting precious metals from raw ore required a process. The Spanish used mercury amalgamation, a technique imported from European metallurgy and refined in the New World. Workers crushed the ore into powder, mixed it with mercury, and the mercury bonded chemically with the silver and gold. Heat the amalgam over fire, the mercury vaporizes into the air, and pure metal remains behind. The process was efficient. It allowed Spain to extract wealth that would have otherwise been impossible to refine. It was also poisonous on a massive scale. Mercury does not simply disappear. Residue remained on the finished coins. The workers who breathed mercury vapor developed symptoms, documented extensively in colonial records. Their hands began to tremble. Their gums bled and their teeth fell out. They became irritable, then paranoid, then violent. Their minds deteriorated. Many went completely mad before dying in agony. The Spanish called the condition azogamiento, mercury sickness. Records from the Royal Mint at Potosi describe workers unable to sign their names because their hands shook so violently. Physicians of the era noted the progression, tremors, personality changes, and what they called the madness before death. Modern toxicology knows this as mercury poisoning, and the symptoms match precisely what colonial doctors observed. The mines at Zacatecas in Mexico showed identical patterns. Workers died young. Those who survived longest displayed erratic behavior that superstitious observers attributed to curses or demonic possession. The mercury was everywhere. In the air, in the water, on the coins. Now consider a pirate crew that captures a Spanish treasure ship. Imagine the celebration, the division of plunder among men who had risked everything. Coins pass from hand to hand. Men count their shares over and over, running contaminated gold through their fingers. They store coins in leather pouches worn against their skin day and night. They sleep with their fortune close, afraid that crewmates might steal their share while they dream. Within months, the symptoms would begin. Trembling hands that made holding a cutlass difficult. Irritability that escalated to violence over trivial disputes. Paranoid delusions about crewmates plotting to steal their share, delusions that sometimes led to murder. A captain watching his crew descend into madness would have no explanation except the obvious one. The gold was cursed. It had to be. Mercury poisoning was not the only threat hiding in plain sight aboard a pirate vessel. These men lived surrounded by lead. Their drinking vessels were pewter, an alloy containing substantial amounts of lead. Their plates were pewter. The mugs they raised in celebration after every successful raid leached poison into every drink. The musket balls they loaded into pistols and blunderbusses were pure lead. Pirates handled ammunition constantly, loading, unloading, sorting through stores of shot. Lead enters the body through the skin, through ingestion, through any contact. An active pirate might handle lead shot hundreds of times per week. Lead poisoning develops slowly, so slowly that victims rarely connect their symptoms to any single cause. The effects read like a catalog of pirate stereotypes: aggression, poor impulse control, cognitive decline that made long-term planning nearly impossible, abdominal pain that drove men to drink more rum, which only accelerated the absorption of lead from their pewter tankards. An entire ship's company suffering chronic lead exposure would exhibit behavior indistinguishable from a crew under a curse, fighting among themselves over imagined insults, making irrational decisions that cost lives and treasure, deteriorating physically and mentally over months at sea with no explanation anyone could identify. When these men finally came ashore, their strange behavior reinforced the superstitions of port towns already primed to believe in curses. The pirates themselves had no better explanation. They knew something was wrong. The gold must be to blame. There is another thread to this story, one that connects stolen gems to the curse narrative in ways that reached far beyond the Caribbean. In the 1660s, a French merchant named Jean-Baptiste Tavernier traveled through India acquiring rare stones for European buyers. Among his acquisitions was a large blue diamond, supposedly taken from a Hindu temple where it served as the eye of an idol statue. This stone would eventually become the Hope Diamond, the most famous cursed object in history. Tavernier sold the diamond to Louis XIV of France in 1668 for the equivalent of 147 kilograms of pure gold. What happened afterward became the foundation of the most persistent curse narrative in gemstone history. Louis XIV wore the diamond and later died of gangrene that spread through his body over weeks of agony. Louis XVI inherited the stone, and his reign ended with his head in a basket beneath the guillotine. Marie Antoinette, who also wore the blue diamond, met the same fate months later. The diamond disappeared during the chaos of the French Revolution. It reappeared in London decades later, smaller, recut, but still recognizable. A succession of owners reportedly suffered bankruptcy, suicide, and mysterious deaths. The pattern seemed inescapable. Much of this curse narrative is embellished or outright fabricated by storytellers and journalists who knew a good tale when they saw one. Tavernier himself lived to the age of 84 and died peacefully, which hardly suggests immediate divine vengeance. But the story persisted because it fit a pattern people wanted to believe. Wealth stolen from sacred places carries a price. Fortune taken through violence returns violence to the taker. This same logic applied to pirate treasure. The gold came from plundered churches, from murdered merchants, from ships whose crews died screaming. Of course it was cursed. How could it not be? But here is where the story takes an unexpected turn. Because there is a place where the curse seems to operate in real time, where treasure hunters have been dying for over 2 centuries, and where the obsession shows no signs of ending. Oak Island sits in Mahone Bay, Nova Scotia, a small wooded island that looks unremarkable from the water. In 1795, 3 teenagers named Daniel McGinnis, John Smith, and Anthony Vaughan noticed a circular depression in the ground beneath an old oak tree. A ship's tackle block hung from one of the branches directly above. They began digging. What they found would launch 229 years of excavation, obsession, and death. The boys hit a layer of flagstones 2 feet down. Then, a platform of oak logs at 10 feet, another platform at 20 feet. The pit appeared to be man-made, deliberately constructed with engineering skill beyond anything these teenage farmers possessed. Word spread through the maritime communities of Nova Scotia. More diggers came with better equipment. They found layers of charcoal, putty, and coconut fiber, a material that does not grow anywhere near Nova Scotia and would have required transport from thousands of miles away. At 90 feet, they reportedly discovered a flat stone inscribed with mysterious symbols. One translation claimed it read, "40 feet below, 2 million pounds are buried." Then the pit flooded. Salt water rushed in through what appeared to be an elaborate booby trap system of channels connected to nearby Smith's Cove. Every attempt to pump out the water failed. Dig deeper, and more water rushed in. The engineering, if that is what it was, had been designed by someone who understood hydraulics well enough to protect whatever lay below. Since 1795, at least 6 men have died searching for Oak Island's treasure. Falls, accidents, equipment failures, and one case where hydrogen sulfide gas killed a worker and nearly killed 3 others who tried to rescue him. Estimated costs of excavation exceed $100 million across dozens of separate expeditions over more than 2 centuries. Theories about what lies beneath range from Captain Kidd's buried fortune to Knights Templar gold to the lost manuscripts of William Shakespeare. Franklin Roosevelt investigated the pit as a young man. Errol Flynn put money into an excavation attempt. The History Channel has aired a show called The Curse of Oak Island since 2014, running more than 10 seasons as the Lagina brothers pour years of their lives and millions of dollars into the search. Nobody has found treasure. The pit may be natural, a geological formation created by the dissolving limestone common to the region. Sinkholes in limestone can create layered collapses that look artificial. Or it may be exactly what legend claims, an engineered vault protecting something valuable enough to justify such elaborate defenses. Either way, Oak Island demonstrates the power of the curse narrative. The promise of pirate gold has consumed lives and fortunes for over 2 centuries. The treasure hunters become the cursed. Consider what actually happened to the famous pirates who succeeded in taking vast fortunes. Samuel Bellamy was the wealthiest pirate of the Golden Age, a man who captured over 50 ships in just 2 years of raiding. In April 1717, his flagship Whydah went down in a nor'easter off Cape Cod. The storm struck at night with winds exceeding 70 miles per hour. Bellamy drowned along with 143 of his crew. Only 2 men survived. When the wreck was discovered in 1984 by explorer Barry Clifford, it still contained thousands of coins and artifacts. The treasure Bellamy had accumulated through years of violence sat at the bottom of the Atlantic for 267 years. He never spent his fortune. The sea took him, and the gold together. Captain William Kidd was commissioned as a privateer by English authorities, given legal permission to hunt French ships and pirates. Somewhere along the way, he crossed the line into actual piracy. In 1698, he captured the Quetta Merchant, a ship carrying gold, silver, silk, and spices worth over 70,000 pounds. Kidd buried a portion of his loot on Gardiner's Island, hoping to use it as a bargaining chip when he returned to face charges in Boston. The bargaining failed. Authorities seized the buried treasure and shipped Kidd to London in chains. He was hanged at Execution Dock in 1701. His body was coated in tar, placed in an iron cage, and hung over the Thames for 3 years as a warning to other pirates. Blackbeard terrorized the Atlantic coast for 2 years, with a reputation for cruelty that made him legendary even among pirates. In November 1718, a Royal Navy force under Lieutenant Robert Maynard cornered him at Ocracoke Island off the Carolina coast. Blackbeard died in hand-to-hand combat on the deck of Maynard's sloop, suffering 5 gunshot wounds and over 20 sword cuts before finally falling. His head was hung from the bowsprit as proof of death and later displayed on a pike at the entrance to Hampton Roads Harbor. His treasure has never been found, if it ever existed at all. Henry Every pulled off the single richest prize in pirate history. In 1695, off the coast of India, he captured the Mughal ship Ganges Sawai. The cargo included gold, silver, gems, and satins worth over 600,000 pounds, perhaps equivalent to $150 million today. The plunder was so massive that the Mughal emperor threatened to expel all English traders from India and declare war on the East India Company. Every escaped and vanished, one of the few pirates who might have gotten away clean. But contemporary accounts suggest otherwise. Every reportedly returned to England and tried to fence his stolen gems through merchants in Bristol and London. The merchants cheated him, paying pennies on the pound or simply keeping the stones. His crew scattered, pursued by bounty hunters attracted by the enormous reward on Every's head. By some reports, the most successful pirate in history died in poverty in Devon, unable to sell the jewels he had murdered for, reduced to begging in the streets. Bartholomew Roberts was the most successful pirate of the era by sheer volume of captures, taking over 400 ships during his career. In February 1722, HMS Swallow caught his fleet off the coast of West Africa. Roberts had sworn he would never be taken alive and dressed in his finest clothes for what he knew would be the final battle. Grapeshot struck him in the throat during the first volley. He died instantly, still standing. His men threw his body overboard in full regalia per his standing instructions. His fortune sank with him. The pattern is inescapable: fame, fortune, death, or poverty. Almost no Golden Age pirate, retired wealthy and free. They had a saying for this: they chose a merry life and a short one. The phrase appears repeatedly in trial transcripts and depositions from captured pirates. They knew the odds. They accepted them. They just thought they would be the exception. The curse was real. It was simply not supernatural. Mercury in the gold coins slowly poisoned them, creating symptoms indistinguishable from madness. Lead in their daily lives degraded their minds over months and years. The violence they inflicted attracted violence in return from navies, bounty hunters, and fellow pirates who saw them as targets. The wealth they accumulated made them walking treasure chests, worth more dead than alive to anyone willing to pull a trigger. The lifestyle itself was lethal in a dozen ways that had nothing to do with supernatural forces. Tropical diseases killed more sailors than combat ever did: yellow fever, malaria, dysentery. A scratch from a cutlass could become infected and kill a strong man within a week before antibiotics existed. Storms swallowed ships without warning on seas that pirates could not avoid if they wanted to catch prey. Even successful pirates spent their loot within months, gambling and drinking away fortunes in the pirate haven of Nassau or the taverns of Port Royal. Then they had to return to the sea for more, each voyage increasing the probability of capture, shipwreck, or death in battle. Those who buried treasure often died before retrieving it. Those who spent treasure found it bought temporary pleasures and permanent enemies. Those who tried to retire found their reputations made peaceful life impossible. The curse was real. It just was not magic. It was chemistry. It was probability. It was the inevitable mathematics of a profession built on violence and short-term thinking. 300 years later, people still hunt for pirate gold. They dig on Oak Island. They dive on wrecks in the Caribbean. They scan beaches with metal detectors, hoping to find a single doubloon washed up from some forgotten shipwreck. The curse continues. Not because the gold is haunted, because the human fascination with sudden wealth never ends. Because we want to believe that treasure is out there, waiting, and that we might be the lucky ones who find it. The pirates knew better. They lived the curse. They died from it. And they never stopped searching for more.